Chapter 14. Keither was losing his patience with Jamar. At first, he'd felt nothing but sympathy for this hapless working man. His only crime had been courting a pretty girl, and he'd had no way of knowing what a dangerous monster she was. But Jamar was a whiner, and after hours of walking around Pigton's Landing with him, it was getting old. At least the day would be over soon. The cold afternoon was turning into a frosty night. The ugly orange lights of the east side flickered on, a few at a time, and respectable people were starting to make themselves scarce. Keither was grateful for his coat of fur. The bare-skinned people were starting to blow on their hands and rub their arms. "Look," said Jamar, "I keep telling you, I don't know where she lives. If she's really a Sith, shouldn't she be in a castle or something? With Sith troopers everywhere, big fleet of starships?" "That was years ago, kiddo," said Rolls. "That was before they lost the war. Now they're down to hanging out in dumps like this." "You mean my home?" "Yeah, exactly." There was a silence, filled only by the buffeting of the wind. "I think we've got enough for one day," said Hanks, tightening his scarf. "We confirmed your original place of residence, the place where you first met, and all her favorite haunts. We'll plot these locations on a map and see what that tells us about where she lives." "You'll get on that quick, right?" said Jamar. "Whatever it takes to catch this crazy witch, you need to do it fast." "Cool your heels, son. I work as fast as I can, but this is a big job no matter how you cut it." They started the long, dark walk back to the police station, which had become their unofficial base. Someone appeared in front of them, as if he'd been waiting for them. But he didn't look like a mugger. He wore a neat, deep blue shirt and patches on his chest as if he were a military man. "Gentlemen," said a suave, sinister male voice, "I'm so very pleased to have found you." Jamar spoke first. "Oh yeah? And who do you think you are?" "Oh no, Jamar, terribly sorry, but I do not expect you to recognize me. I take no offense at that, of course. You should know that you are of great—" "Heads up!" Hanks cut in. "Behind us!" Behind them, a black-cloaked figure ran at them. Twin blades of glowing red energy erupted from something in its hands, and with a female scream, she barreled at Keither. A Sith! Keither leapt out of reach of her swing, drew his lightsaber, and ignited the golden-yellow blade. His focus narrowed, and even his hearing faded to nothing. He was aware only of his enemy. Before he was ready, she pounced on him, and with a flailing swing of his blade, he turned her strike away, but her other blade came up at him and nearly sliced off his left leg. He twisted out of the way and staggered back. Hanks was saying something, but Keither couldn't make it out. The sheriff's pistol blazed, and shots bounced off the Sith's double blade. She was not hit, but he'd surprised her enough that she stayed put for a moment. Keither gathered himself. Some of his awareness came back to him as he remembered what he'd been taught. Makashi style, the art of lightsaber dueling, was his specialty. He stood sideways to the Sith, presenting the smallest target possible, and he held the hilt of his lightsaber in front of his face, palm up. He aimed his toes forward and got ready to lunge. "Run for your life!" screamed Rolls, and Keither looked just long enough to see him fleeing, firing his snub pistol wildly at the blue-shirted man. Blaster bolts snapped from a blaster in the shadowy man's hand, and one of them caught Jamar in the shin and sent him screaming to the ground. A shot from Hanks struck the man square in the chest, and another one knocked him flat. But then more muzzle flares erupted in the street corners. More blaster bolts came screaming in at them. The Sith renewed her attack, but now Keither brought his blade up to meet it and knock it aside. The Sith rotated her weapon and brought the other blade around to him in a horizontal sweep, but a diagonal block sent it glancing upward and gave him an opening. He took it and lunged, aiming a thrust at her chest. She stopped him with a spin of her blades, but now at least he had her on the defensive. "Keep shooting!" hollered Hanks, and through a corner of his vision, Keither saw him dragging Jamar into the cover of an underground parking lot. Rolls hopped around and haphazardly fired back at whoever was shooting, but then bolted into the shelter after Hanks. One of the hostile blaster bolts came at Keither, and he dodged back out of the way. He needed cover. For some reason, the Sith hesitated, and Keither took the opportunity to circle her and put her and the shooters on the same side of him. The Sith ran away. Keither was perplexed, then realized that she was going for the underground garage. "No!" he cried, and he charged after her. Down the ramp to the basement level, Keither feared he would find his 3 companions dead on the ground. Instead, they had split up, with Rolls and Hanks in opposite corners, firing at the Sith. Keither could not see Jamar, nor could he take the time to find him. He made a controlled lunge at the Sith. She sidestepped, and as she moved back at him, she made another horizontal swipe, which Keither ducked. He jabbed at her, sending her twisting around him, and when he couldn't get his blade to her fast enough, he improvised and kicked her in the gut. When she might have staggered and left herself open, instead she rolled backward. Hanks and Rolls, who had been spacing their shots carefully, now opened up on her, but she was backed into a corner and had both at a similar angle. She blocked easily. The panic of battle ebbed a little, and Keither finally found himself able to think. He needed to save Jamar, and he had last seen him with Hanks. Sure enough, Jamar lay cowering behind the sheriff, clutching his wounded leg. "Go up!" yelled Hanks. "Get up the stairs!" He pointed his finger at a narrow staircase in the back of the garage. The Sith leapt at Hanks, and Keither saw it coming just in time to interpose himself between her and him. They clashed and ground their blades together, their faces just a few feet apart, and when she raised her lightsaber, Keither knew what she would try next. An underhanded swing arced up at him, and he stopped resisting her upper blade and blocked the lower instead. He felt the pressure change again, and her upper blade came back. He parried as best he could. With the moment's opening, he calmed himself and gave himself up to the Force. In return, the Force gave itself back. He aimed his palm at the Sith and pushed. She fell back a few feet, but didn't stagger. "Keither! Come on, buddy, get back here!" Without turning to look, Keither could sense Rolls backing up the steps behind Hanks, muscling Jamar up with him. The stairs would be a good place, Keither decided, so he made for them. But the Sith had already had the same idea, and she ignored him completely as the two raced for the stairs. Rolls stopped, crouched low on the Duracrete steps, and peered down the sights of his blaster. He snapped out 2 shots at the Sith, and she deflected both but had to slow down to do it. Keither pulled ahead of her. With great effort, he stopped himself at the base of the stairs and rotated his waist to face her with his blade. With his stance wrong, he could not lunge, but the Sith did not seem to know that. She stopped, snarled, and aimed an empty hand at him. Keither righted his stance, just in time to resist a force push. She did not use a force push. Bright blue light crackled from her fingertips, and Keither felt sharp, prickling heat on his arm and right shoulder, but his blade caught most of it. He ignored the pain, calmed himself further, and focused only on the lightning. Now he was catching all of it. The strain was such that he could not move, but the Sith was forced to concentrate too, and she was bound to be tiring herself out. Behind him, Rolls' gun screamed as he shot at her, but he did not hit. "Get back!" Keither grunted at him. "No, come on, I'm not leaving you!" "I'll be there." Rolls listened. He and the others disappeared behind him. Abruptly, the lightning stopped. The Sith did not look tired. She tapped a communicator on her forearm and commanded, "Get on top! They're climbing the stairs! Head 'em off!" She had exposed her arm. Keither took the opportunity, reached out with the force, and pulled the communicator from its straps into his left hand. "Belay that," he said into it. "Leave now if you cherish your lives." And he held it in his fingers and snapped it neatly in half. The Sith flashed a carnivorous grin. "That won't stop them." Keither asked the question he had always wanted to ask of a Sith. "What could you possibly hope to gain by this?" "You would never understand, Jedi." I understand that all life is precious, including yours. Why would you throw it away by joining the Sith? Maybe my life was thrown away already. She opened her arms. Maybe this is the best I've ever felt in my life. Did you think of that, Jedi? If you want to feel better, the dark side is your enemy. He lowered his blade. Let it go. The path to wellness is through the light. Do you really think I'm stupid enough to surrender? You'd just leave me to rot in prison. I would not. I am a Jedi. I believe in forgiveness. I don't want your forgiveness. She extinguished her lightsaber. But you're lucky, Jedi, because I'm not in the mood to kill you. And she ran out of the garage. Keither tried to catch his breath. He did not believe for a moment that the Sith had disengaged out of mercy. He could only assume that she wanted to fight him on level ground. Gunshots on the roof brought him back to the present, and he scampered up the stairs, 3 stories to the top. He found Rolls, Hanks, and Jamar on the top level, shooting down over the edges. "Keither!" cried Rolls. "Did you get her?" "She ran away," he said. "I can't believe it." "Yeah, well, these Sith troopers don't look scared to me." Troopers? Keither didn't want to believe it. But when he peeked over the edge of the building, he saw silver armor and black face masks. Troopers. As if, suddenly, they were in the war. But the Sith Knight wasn't there. Where was she? That was a question his eyes and ears could not answer, but the Force could. In the middle of the rooftop, he retracted his lightsaber, knelt, and reached out with the Force. She was directly underneath him, and she ran for the edge of her floor. And the floors of the garage were open to the air. He reactivated his lightsaber. The Sith's hand appeared on the edge of the roof, and she vaulted up, her lightsaber hissing through the air in a circle around her. She stopped, locked eyes with Keither, but then ignored him and made for Hanks. Hanks, it seemed, had been ready for that and dodged out of the way, towards Keither. But the Sith did not chase him, nor did she attack Rolls. Jamar. She was going for Jamar, who lay slumped against the side of the rooftop, farthest from the action. And she was already between him and Keither. For a moment, Keither was at a loss for what to do, then the Sith made a mistake. She jumped the last few paces to her prey. Keither called on the Force and pushed her in the back, and with a yelp, she went sailing over Jamar, over the ledge of the building and down into the street. She would be back. Keither stood over Jamar and said, "I won't let her get to you." "It's her!" he gasped. "It's her! She wants me dead!" There was a new commotion in the streets below. Blue and red light flashed and danced against the white duracrete and the orange glow of the streetlights. Blue and red, thought Keither. That could only mean one thing. Master Strid is here! He laughed with relief. The Sith would have no idea what hit her. He looked over the edge and saw that he was wrong. 2 speeder bikes, covered in blinding red and blue lights, had slid to a stop around the corner, and their occupants vaulted off, took cover behind them, aimed their blasters, and demanded, "Drop those weapons!" Each bike shone a searingly bright white lamp onto the Sith troopers. 2 more speeder bikes came in behind the first 2. Then, on the other side of the intersection, 3 more arrived in quick succession. Their lights blazed. The Sith troopers fired back, but they were firing in all directions and had no cover from their new attackers, more of whom appeared every minute. One trooper took a bolt to the back and collapsed, and Keither turned his head to see that Hanks had shot that one. But Keither was not concerned with the troopers. The Sith Knight was still down there, and almost certainly trying to climb back up again. "Everyone, get away from the edges," he said. "That Sith will be back." Getting the message, Jamar clawed his way to the middle of the roof. Moments later, a black, leathery streak launched itself up from the melee, onto a rooftop across the street from them. The Sith Knight stopped and faced them, calculation in her eyes. But then she turned, pulled up her hood, and fled across the rooftops. The firefight went quiet. None of the Sith troopers, it seemed, had surrendered, nor could Keither see how any of them could have gotten away. Police officers flooded into the garage to smoke out any who might have fled, but Keither had the sense they'd find nothing. Keither panted, his breathing making little clouds in front of him. He retracted his blade, and the only sounds were the howling of sirens and the urgent voices of the police below. "You still with us, Keither?" came Hanks's voice. Shakily, Keither put away his weapon. "I've never been so scared in my life." "That your first real fight?" "Yes." "You did great for a rookie." Hanks pointed at Jamar. "You're a healer, right?" "Of course." Jamar's need made Keither remember himself, and he knelt by the wounded human. The wound was an ugly, ragged black burn, but the patient showed no symptoms of blood loss, which was a good sign. The shot to his shin couldn't have hit any vital organs either, which was also good. Organs were hard to fix, but flesh was easy. "Hold still," he said. "Close your eyes and focus on the healing." He called to the light side, and it answered. Under his hands, Jamar's burned skin flaked away, and fragile new flesh, white for lack of blood, crept in around the wound. In the center, charred bone firmed itself back up, torn ends of muscle groups found each other and reconnected, and finally the skin closed. For a moment, there was a pale patch where the wound had been. Then his blood flowed into the restored veins, his color came back, and then there was no sign that he had ever been shot, except for the hole in his pant leg. "Turn around slowly," said a voice behind them. "Hands where I can see them." The three standing men obeyed, and found a human policewoman aiming her blaster at them. She quickly lowered it. "Come with me, we'll keep you safe." Before following her, Keither stole one last glance down at the streets and saw them flooded with bright-colored light. At least 24 vehicles had come, probably closer to 36, and they were still arriving. "Sheriff?" he asked. "Did you summon them?" "Yeah," he said. "How many did you ask for?" "Didn't give him a number. I just said we had multiple attackers and one of them had a red lightsaber. The dispatcher sent a few people." He listened to the sirens for a moment. "I think she sent all of them." They emerged from the garage into the blinding glare of the emergency lights, where the police sat them down by a freshly arrived ambulance. A Nikto medic asked if any of them were wounded, and Hanks waved her away. "Sheriff!" said Jamar. "Sheriff, that was her! That was Scylla!" "With the red lightsaber?" "Yeah, that was her, I swear!" "And it was you she was after," Keither added. "She kept trying to get past me." Hanks palmed his forehead. "Boy, did we go under-equipped. Keither, if you hadn't been there, she would have cut right through us." "And if my master had been here, we could have stopped her." "Yeah, she sure picked a bad time to punch out." They fell silent. "Hey," said Rolls, "are we not going to talk about the Rancor in the room? That Sith was not alone. She had firepower. And not just random mooks either. These guys are all kitted out. Look!" He picked up the slack remains of a Sith trooper, showing off his black and chrome armor. A policeman yelled at him not to touch anything, and he let it drop. "And that first guy? He was a Sith officer. The uniform was just like they had back in the war." "A Sith remnant," said Keither. "Well," sighed Hanks, "if I was a betting man, I'd owe you again. Looks like Scylla Horus had some friends after all." On Yostin, nobody dressed well. The official uniform was a pair of overalls caked in dust and pollen, or maybe a beaten-up riding outfit, if one felt fancy. Picton's Landing was the exception. Here, there was more to look at. In the rich quarter, the cattle barons and captains of industry would put on tailored suits and try to combine them with riding boots and colonial-era survival gear, just to remind everyone of their heritage. The better-off factory workers in the industrial quarter always put on clean clothes, most of it second-hand stuff from the core worlds that was still good but had gone out of fashion there. The poorer workers at least bothered to color coordinate. And in the seedy district, of course, everyone carefully calculated their outfit to dissuade muggers by looking as formidable as possible. The classes each had their own way of dressing, impossible to confuse with any of the others. That, Scylla figured, might explain why everyone was staring at her. Here in the nicer end of town, she was a black and red hooded monster in a sea of faux roughneck fops. Let them stare, she thought. She was not in the mood to deal with their petty sense of propriety. The assassination should have been a success. The soft, complacent Jedi should have fallen like grass shoots to her finely honed skills. And the sheriff and the Dug, those clumsy, force-blind nothings flailing around with their blasters, they weren't even worth thinking about. At least, they should not have been. Luck must have been against the Sith somehow. And now the Sith had been discovered, and, what was worse, Scylla's honor had been stained. That morning, Darth Umber had spoken to her. He had not sent Nahus to relay his message as he always had, and he hadn't even summoned Scylla to his quarters. For the first time Scylla knew of, Umber had condescended to come to her. It hadn't been a gesture of humility. He had told her, in no uncertain terms, that the Sith were on the verge of being discovered and it was all her fault, and that she needed to pack her things and leave. She would be welcomed back when the Republic investigation lost the trail of the Sith, and only then. This is a job for the whole army, not for me. A few more people looked sideways at her, and it occurred to her that that had been a reckless thing to say in public, but she refused to feel ashamed of it. She was fed up with restraining herself. On a sign on a street corner, she saw herself, but younger. A picture of her smiled incongruously at passers-by. Scylla remembered that picture. It was part of the last family photograph she had ever been in, and it showed her as a wispy, long-haired, flat-chested kid. There were other pictures beside it, fuzzy, off-center shots of her, none showing her face, but all of them showing her in her Sith cloak, the one she wore now. The caption read, "Wanted dead or alive, Scylla Horus, for attempted murder and Sith conspiracy. Human female, 25 standard years. Force sensitive. Armed with a double-bladed lightsaber. Favors ambush and assassination tactics. Capable of mind tricks and force lightning. Commands a Sith remnant." Scylla tried her best to laugh, but it came out as a huff. So, she thought, my face is famous now. She looked for posters of other Sith and found none, and something fell into place in her mind. Ducking into a dark corner behind an empty shop, she pulled out her holoprojector. She sent a call to Darth Umber in the off chance that he would answer. To her surprise, he did. "Sleepless," said his image. "I trust this is important." "You betrayed me," she said. "I have seen the bounty poster for me, and I know what you have planned. The Republic thinks I am the only Force-sensitive Sith on this planet, and you plan for me to die in my efforts so the investigators will think they have found everyone and go home. You don't want me to sabotage the investigation. You mean to sacrifice me to throw the Republic off the scent." "Nonetheless, Sleepless, the offer stands. Should you succeed in distracting the Republic from this planet, you will be welcome back into the fold. Which methods you use are of no importance to me." "How do you know I won't reveal you to them?" "You have reaffirmed your loyalty to the Sith. Would you have me believe you were insincere? Perhaps I should not trust you to operate alone." After 5 years as a Sith, Scylla knew a death threat when she heard one, but she ignored it. Something had been gnawing at her ever since that conversation, and she could not bear to keep these thoughts to herself. I'm about to talk about my feelings with Darth Umber, she thought. Pathetic. But with Jamar and Garissa both gone from her life, she had no one else. Darth, there is something else. The pain has gotten worse. You are drawing out your doses of stimulant. If you think you can wean yourself from the addiction, Sleepless, you are wrong. No, I haven't been doing that. That is not what I mean. She pressed her fist to her forehead, clenched her teeth, and finally forced the truth out. My mother died for me. She tried to save me from pain, and I can't ignore that. We have had this conversation already. I will not repeat myself. You're right. I did reject her. I thought that would end the pain, and that with time it would become easier to forget her, but it has not. She looms larger in my mind's eye than ever before. I'm haunted, Darth. I want to rid myself of this memory, but I don't know how. No, you do not wish to banish the memory. Peace is not the path to power. Your inner turmoil gives you power. He was right, of course. Peace held no appeal for her. I only wish that power did not hurt so badly. The pain becomes less with time. Stay your course, Sleepless. Finish your mission and reclaim your title as a Knight of the Sith. Scylla scowled. She decided it was not even worth trying to ask for more Sith to assist her, not when Umber's backup plan involved her being cut to ribbons by Jedi agents and then dismissed as a fluke. You expect me to save the Enclave single-handedly? Fine then, I will. But when I get back, I do not want to return as a knight. I expect to be called Darth. Umber laughed, and it sounded like a rock slide. You think you deserve to become the youngest Darth in history? His voice lightened a little. Perhaps you will. Bring me the heads of 5 Jedi Masters, and then we will see. Yes, we will. She shut off the call. If I'm to be hung out to dry, then I'm done being discreet. She fingered her lightsaber. It is time to tie up a loose end. Deputy Jonan Hanks's head spun. He had always known that his father's job was difficult and dangerous, demanding insight, quick thinking, and diplomacy. He hadn't realized there was so much to keep track of. No, he said to the new protocol droid. We gather everyone at Nenayetch, not here. If the Sith sees us all here, she'll know we're trying to bait her into a trap and she'll stay away. We'll airlift people here from the town after we confirm the Sith is here. But, sir, said the droid, I conducted a visual scan of Nenayetch Township maps and was unable to find landing pads. It's not pads, it's a grass field. What did you expect? Oh, I see. Fix it. Now what happened to the combat speeders? Are they still on their way? 2 have arrived in Nenayetch. I shall message them to remain there. And we're lucky to have them. Dismissed. Jonan walked past the droid to a ship full of confused bounty hunters that had just touched down. The occupants got out, looked around, and saw nothing but unoccupied Flatbird County grassland. There's been a mix-up, he said to their leader, a hooded being who wore goggles and a gas mask. Tell your pilot to set you down in Nenayetch. When we have a contact, then we'll get you here as fast as we can. We are aware of the change, said the gas-masked being in a female voice, but you militia have soured the deal. We were promised a hefty reward for the head of the Sith, split equally among us. She gestured to the other hunters behind her, who looked like they numbered about a half-dozen, but stood so close together that Jonan couldn't see. But now you have arrived, and the bounty will be split more than 100 ways. We will barely turn a profit, even if we succeed. For a moment, Jonin was baffled. Now that I have arrived? He repeated dumbly. Then it came to him. They think I'm the militia. He flashed his badge. I forgot to introduce myself. Deputy Sheriff Jonin Hanks, Flatbird County. And as for them, he pointed behind him at the loose crowd of Yostinites, armed with hunting rifles and self-defense blasters, and dressed in war surplus armor. We don't know exactly what we're facing, so I'm glad we've got as many guns as we do, and you should be glad too. You have let in too many bounty stealers, Nikto. This is dishonorable. Jonin clenched his fists. What do you think this is, a concert? We don't stop letting people in once we have enough. We don't even know how many people is enough. Another voice came in. You folks won't be worrying about money when we're done. It was his father. I'm Borden Hanks, County Sheriff. Do you know that the Sith we're hunting held her own against a Jedi Knight? That Jedi had help, and he still almost died to her. He pointed at the bounty hunters. When word gets out that you helped take her down, your names are going to be big. On Yostin, perhaps, the masked woman scoffed. If you want, we'll get you signed statements of what you did. Here. He displayed his hollow business card. Anyone doubts it, tell him to call us. We'll vouch for you. The bounty hunters were silent. Accepted, said the leader, and with a swift, sharp turn, she stalked back into her ship. With her back turned, Jonin could see a sniper rifle slung on her back. He felt ashamed. He should have noticed that earlier. Situational awareness will save your life, his father had always said. You're doing fine, said his father, as if Jonin had said his thoughts out loud. This is pretty hectic. Don't worry if there's hiccups here and there. Jonin kept his eyes on the bounty hunters as they followed their leader back to the ship. Besides the hooded woman, he saw a great, white, furry beast holding a laser repeater like it was an ordinary rifle, a few mottled-skinned reptilians in heavy armor, a heavily tattooed Deveronian in what looked like a stealth suit, a Wookiee with twin blades, and a middle-aged Yostinite woman in plain clothes. The latter split away from the bounty hunters and handed one of them a few credits. As promised, she murmured. Can I help you, ma'am? Asked Jonin. The woman looked at Jonin, then his father, then back at Jonin as if confused. Sheriff Hanks, she said finally, looking at his father. Master Strit! His father extended a hand, and they shook. Was hoping we'd see you again. Welcome back to the party. Master Strit, thought Jonin. He'd seen her talking to his father while he was in Picton's Landing. Mentally, he kicked himself for not recognizing her. Yes, said Strit, itching the back of her head. By giving in to my fear, I have stained my honor and the honor of the Jedi. I promise you I will not give in to my emotions a second time. Keither will be happy to hear that, said his father. He's in Nennietch now. I see. She looked past him at the gathering militia, and her eyes widened. I am surprised that the Republic Army is here. And she was troubled too, judging by her voice. The bounty hunter's ship powered up its engines, and the downdraft ruffled everyone's clothes, and for a moment it was too loud to talk. They waited patiently as the ship lifted away and soared off to Nennietch. You want to know about the Republic Army? Said Jonin's father. My deputy's in charge here. He can explain that. That's my cue, thought Jonin, and he recited what he'd done. We sent out a call to the Galactic Army a few days ago. We estimate 5 standard rotations before they can get to us, if they believe us. If? Carlota indicated the gathered warriors. It seems the army has already arrived. Oh, that isn't the army. The locals heard of the bounty and came by themselves. That is a militia? They are armed to the teeth, and it looks as if half the county has arrived. Jonin looked again at the ragtag little army. It wasn't quite half the county, but it was easily in the triple digits. He nodded approvingly. You'll find Yostin's a patriotic planet. The people here remember the last war. A lot of them were in it, so when someone says there's a Sith here, they take it pretty seriously. Now that you mention it, your father did tell me something about Yostinites being independent. She looked around uncomfortably. To my shame, I am not current on the hunt. Why are we in your county? Is the Sith here? Even better. She's been here, and we know where she's going. Look at this. Jonan pulled out a holoprojector and showed a diorama of a small, ruined house. Chairs had been turned over, cupboards smashed open, and drapes torn free and strewn in corners. This is the residence of Del Horace. It was broken into while he was in Pigton's Landing helping with the investigation. See anything strange about it? It has been ransacked. Not just that, look at these. He pointed out chairs that had been cut neatly in half and metal containers sliced open. Laser scoring marred the walls, and not in a pattern that any blaster could make. Lightsaber cuts. Someone with a lightsaber came in and wrecked Del Horace's house. But since nothing was missing, we can tell our culprit wasn't there to steal. She wanted Del's head. And I say she because there's only one person on this planet with a lightsaber and a motive. You refer to Scylla Horace? Exactly. Now we've set up a trap for her. We planted evidence that Del Horace has set up a farmstead on that hill, so if she does any snooping, she'll think he's there. As soon as she approaches, one of our sentries will alert us, and I'll have my sniper take a shot at her. In case it misses, we'll fly in the militia and corner her. Out in the open, shooters will have the advantage. You don't intend to give her a chance to redeem herself? Too risky. We don't know what she's capable of, and the element of surprise could save a lot of lives. She deserves a chance to redeem herself. Everyone does. Hanks folded his arms. Master Stritt, I respect your being idealistic, but she's guilty of one attempted murder and she's the prime suspect of a lot more. And from what she told your Padawan, it's pretty clear she's not sorry. If she wasn't so damn dangerous, we could give her a chance, but as it stands, we don't have that luxury. Besides, nothing is stopping her from turning herself in. I see. She looked down. If you will excuse me, I must return to Keither and speak to him. You don't need my permission. She nodded and walked stiffly away. When she was well out of earshot, Jonan turns to his father and murmured, Can we trust her? We can trust her, his father nodded. She's as square as they come. If it was me, I wouldn't let her anywhere near a fight. She doesn't look ready. She's a bit of a fuss, no doubt about it. But she fessed up and came back when she didn't have to. If that's not courage, I don't know what is.